Hi, this is a review of my Levin Goliath guitar from 1970. It's model number 163. It's a Swedish guitar, and a bit of a disclaimer to start with. You shouldn't really do a guitar review for an instrument to which you have an emotional attachment, because you can't be imbalanced. But this is the guitar. This is the one thing I would rescue from a burning building. I think I've had it since I was 18, and it's a lovely guitar. It's in my teens and 20s, I played this so much that I wore out the frets and wore holes into the fretboard, which have since been corrected. But here's the sound of the guitar. It's not the most valuable guitar I have by a long chalk, but it has a real place in my heart because because of its history and its associations and the times I've played it. Also because it is quite a special instrument. Back in the 1970s, the British folk scene was characterised by a very limited range of instruments. And I remember as a teenager seeing the Levin guitars advertised in the Bell music catalogue, which was where we all looked for our pictures of guitars. And I saw this advertised locally second hand and emptied all the savings my mum and dad had put in a bank account for me to purchase it, and it's done me well for many years. The joy of the Levin guitars is that they were made out of Swedish timbers and all solid. So this is it's a fairly wide-grained spruce top. I'm not quite sure what variety of spruce it is, but I think it's quite a nice one. And it's an unfigured maple back and sides. Nothing too spectacular about it. The neck looks like it might be mahogany, and it's a sunburst finish. And sunburst traditionally was associated with lower qualities of timber, cosmetically speaking, but this has been made with what I think are really nice woods. Lots of old folkies can remember these, and there were two things that were generally done to them when people first acquired them. One was they changed the tuners, because the Van Gent tuners were regarded as being rubbish. And the second was that they changed the bridge because of this strange arrangement, if you can see it, where it has separate saddles for each one of the strings. And the downside of that is those screw-in saddles in their original format were made out of nylon, which is not the best material for conducting sound. And so a lot of people took off the bridge and put in a conventional bridge with a slot saddle and a bone bridge. I am probably the only person in the world who has one of these, which has the original screw-in saddles which have been corrected to work properly. I believe at one time somebody did replace them with brass, and somebody somewhere has perhaps got that one. I replaced the nylon with engineering plastic, which was a bit of an engineering feat in itself, because I had no idea what I was doing. But actually, I've retained the original bridge, and the sound and the sustain are fabulous. The other thing I've done to help the sustain is I've just put two metal brass bridge pins in at the base end of the bridge, and I think that gives it a little more balance. using brass bridge pins can make the sound a little thin. What it does is it adds mass to the bridge, and it's a fairly conventional technique. It's the one that Martin Carther uses, is to put brass pins in the bass part of the bridge to try and make that more in tune with the resonance of the bass strings. And the other thing about the tuners is that the Van Gent tuners were indeed terrible on this, and it wasn't till years later that I found out what the problem was, and I cannibalised. I found that Van Gent was still in business and still making tuners, so I bought some of cheap versions of their tuners and cannibalised the bits, because it turned out that the spindles had been misturned, so they were so as you turned the tuners, it would stick. So they were really awful. They now work like fairly passable tuners, although I must say I have been tempted to swap them for Grovers like everybody else, but they work well enough and it feels like an original guitar. The joy about a maple instrument, and Taylor have started using maple more recently, is that it has its very own sound. It's got a kind of brightness at the top end, but the bass can be a little light. And the way Gibson get around this is by, for instance, on the J200, they use a huge body. So what you get is a guitar with lots of bottom end, but a bright top as well. This is a dreadnought size and shape. So in actual fact, what you get is dreadnought bottom end, but maple top. I haven't got brand new strings on this. They're elixirs, and they've been on some while, so it does go even brighter when you put brand new strings on, but you get the feel of it. So if you ever get the chance to get hold of one of these, question is, what sort of condition is it in? And do you have a friendly guitar renovator and technician who can sort out any difficulties it might have? But they are lovely, lovely guitars. I will say this one went through the wars a bit because it acquired a number of scratches and scrapes along the way. But what I found out was the joy of, it's a nitrocellulose finish, and the joy of nitrocellulose is that you can melt in these scratches and cracks by using basically cellulose thinners and dilute cellulose varnish, and they pretty well disappear. I mean, there's some more work I could do on this, but it's all part of the character of the guitar. I stopped playing this when I got my first filed. It just sort of went into the back of a cupboard. Then I forgot about it for many years, and then it just hung on a wall, and then I rehabilitated it more recently. I dealt with the scratches. I sorted the bridge, I sorted the tuners, and it's a guitar. It's not great for plugging in because you can't fit an under-saddle pickup. But in a live performance situation, or if you're able to use a microphone direct on the guitar, it sounds fabulous. I'll just give you a little bit of a tune with a thumb pick, and then I'll give you the same thing with a plectrum to get the feel. Well, I've heard your stories all about your fast trains. Now let me tell you about one all the southern folks have seen. She's a beauty of the Southland. Listen to the whistle scream. It's the Pan American on her way to New Orleans. And put a plectrum, excuse me, I just have to get the plectrum out of my pocket. And yeah. I've heard stories all about your fast trains. Now let me tell you about one all the southern folks have seen. She's a beauty of the Southland. Listen to that whistle scream. It's the Pan American on her way to New Orleans. What I wouldn't use this for is alternative tunings. It's not great for tuning up and down. It takes a little while to settle. And I mean, there are musicians, people like Steve Jinsky, who occasionally brings out one of these when he tours. But he says, you know, she's an old lady that has to be looked after. And that's how it is with this one. It's a 1970 guitar, so it's 50 years old and not looking bad and sounding great. And as I say, I absolutely love it.